Hey guys, so I wanted to talk about a topic that Peter Singer sort of gets, one of the topics that Peter Singer gets the most criticism for, and I actually think it's one of his most based uh, takes, uh, and that's about abortion and sort of eugenics and things. So he talked about this on the Big Conversation show, so yeah, let's check it out.
Updates, and bonus clips, sign up at thebigconversation.show. Those who advocate for disability rights and so on have protested sometimes some of the statements you've made and the events you've been at. What is it about what you say that promotes that kind of a reaction, would you say?
If you're asking specifically about the reaction of people who are advocates for disability rights, it's probably merely that I state things that a lot of other people believe and indeed act on. Because after all, it's very common for people to have prenatal testing to see whether a fetus that they're carrying will have a disability. And in most of these cases, for example, if the disability is Down syndrome, typically something like 85% of the pregnant women will opt to terminate the pregnancy. And, I think that that's a defensible decision, and I think it's a defensible decision because I think it's reasonable to prefer to have a child without Down syndrome than one with Down syndrome. But because I say that explicitly, whereas other people are just doing it in the privacy of their medical clinics and decisions, I think I attract opposition from people who try to maintain that life with disabilities is just as good, and we should not, as they say, discriminate against people with disabilities. But obviously, as I say, most people do discriminate, and I think that's a justifiable form of discrimination.
And when it comes to those kinds of issues, how do you arrive at the view that it's preferable, if you like, to not have a child with disability and so on? What's the kind of the ethic that you've been promoting?
The cases which are easiest are ones where the child will suffer significantly if they are born with a disability. And for that purpose, I'd have to say Down syndrome is probably not a good example. I chose it merely because it's a common disability and people do opt to terminate pregnancy.
Yeah, maybe not a good example in just like a front page first chapter issue, but go deeper into the book and it is a pretty good example, I think.
Pregnancies with Downs. But the underlying ethic that I hold is a utilitarian ethic. That is that we ought to try to reduce the amount of suffering in the world. We ought to try to promote the amount of well-being, happiness, however you want to describe it, in the world. And that I think that when you have children born, particularly with conditions that lead them to suffer greatly, or ones that are very difficult for their parents to cope with, and again, especially in societies that don't provide good support for that, then I think it's a reasonable choice to say, I'd rather have a child without that condition.
Yeah, Peter's correct here. It's like it seems pretty cruel to, like, if you know that your child's gonna be born with brain cancer, it seems pretty cruel to force that child into an existence of suffering and just as a baseline, that seems pretty cruel, especially if you're wanting to have a child and you can kind of sort of retry, especially early on in the pregnancy, if you discover your child's gonna have some sort of undesirable trait like brain cancer, have the abortion. That seems like it's the preferable thing to do. But that's sort of just like the baseline. Like it goes deeper, right? So it's like if we're encouraging people to have these children with these undesirable traits like brain cancer or even less extreme, depression or then we're sort of encouraging those undesirable traits. And if we want to, increase happiness in society, The reason these traits are undesirable is because they're like roadblocks to achieving that goal, right? So it's like you're going up towards happiness, and then you have bone cancer in children, put you down. You're trying to get up to happiness, you have brain cancer in children, put you down. You're going up to happiness, you have mental disabilities that give us low IQs, brings us down. So sort of in order to increase happiness in society, we want a society that allows that increase, right? We want to eliminate as many roadblocks as possible. So yeah, by not encouraging parents to have abortions with undesirable traits, you're encouraging those roadblocks, and then you're decreasing the ability to increase happiness in the world. And then similarly, if going the opposite direction, if it's shown that your child has some desirable traits, they're very healthy, they appear to be very very happy, you have you're able to give them an environment that's going to enrich them, you're in a good school district, whatever, like you can point to all these other aspects, positive aspects, then it's like, oh, like have the child, like absolutely it should be encouraged. So it kind of goes both directions, right? It's like if the child has desirable traits, then we should really encourage having the child, and if it has undesirable traits, we should encourage aborting the child. Because we're trying to create the foundation. We're trying to make the foundation of society one that has a higher potential of happiness. We want to eliminate the roadblocks.